Have you ever really thought about the invisible rules that decide the price of, well, pretty much everything you buy? Your phone, your food, your car. There's this huge, complex game of global trade happening in the background. And, like any game, it needs a referee to keep things fair. So what happens when that referee gets taken out of the game? That's the story we're diving into.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get into why countries even want to block trade. Then we'll look at the actual tools they use to do it. After that, we'll meet the global referee, the WTO that was supposed to manage all this. And then the big twist, how that ref got sidelined. And finally, we'll see what this new, wilder game of global trade actually looks like today.
All right, so at the very heart of all this is a fundamental tension. It's a constant tug-of-war. On one side, every country wants to sell its products to the rest of the world. That's openness. But on the other side, every country also wants to protect its own industries and its own jobs from foreign competition. That's protection.
And that tension is exactly where things get interesting. Whenever you hear about a trade war in the news, it's basically because a country has decided to pull really hard on its end of that rope, putting up a wall to block trade.
The official reasons are actually pretty fascinating because it's not all about money. Of course, protecting local jobs is a huge one. So is shielding a brand new infant industry to help it get on its feet. But then you have things like national security. I mean, you don't want your rival controlling your defense supplies, right? And sometimes it's just pure payback, a straight-up tit-for-tat move against another country.
So how do they actually do it? Well, governments have this whole toolbox of different barriers they can use. Let's pop it open and look at the big three.
First up, we've got the classic, the tariff. It's really simple. Think of it as an entry tax. A product shows up at the border and the government slaps a tax on it. Just like that, it becomes more expensive for people like you and me to buy. It is by far the oldest and most common tool in the box. Next, you've got quotas. Now, if a tariff is about making something more expensive, a quota is about making it more rare. It's a hard limit. A government might say, we are only allowing 10,000 foreign cars into the country this year. And once that 10,000th car rolls in, boom, the door slams shut until next year.
Now, the third tool, the subsidy, is a bit different. It's kind of sneaky. Instead of blocking foreign goods at the border, a subsidy helps the home team from the inside. The government gives its own companies money, cash, tax breaks, you name it. This lowers their costs, making it easier for them to compete against cheaper foreign goods. So let's just recap real quick. Tariffs make foreign stuff more expensive. Quotas limit how much of it can even get in. And subsidies, well, they give the home team a financial boost. 3 different tools, all designed to tip the scales of global trade.
Now, you can probably imagine if every country was just throwing these barriers up whenever they felt like it, it would be total chaos. And for a long time, it pretty much was. That's exactly why the world created a referee, the World Trade Organization, the WTO. Its whole job was to create one set of rules for the entire game.
And the WTO took this job incredibly seriously. They called their dispute system the central pillar of the whole thing. The goal was simple, really. Create a stable, predictable system so everyone knew the rules and played by them. And here was the handshake deal at the center of it all. By joining the WTO, countries agreed, if we have a trade fight, we won't go rogue and start a trade war, we'll bring the complaint to the referee and let the system sort it out.
So how did it work?
It was a pretty straightforward process. First, the countries had to try to talk it out themselves. If that failed, a panel of experts would step in and make a ruling. But, and this is the most critical part, step 3, either country could appeal that decision to the WTO's highest court, called the appellate body. In its decision, that was supposed to be final, binding. The referee's word was law.
But that final step, that binding appeal that made the whole system work, is exactly where everything fell apart. Because for the last few years, the final umpire, well, they haven't been able to make a call. The referee has been sidelined.
So how did this happen? This timeline here shows the breakdown in slow motion. It started back in 2017. When the United States began to block the appointment of any new judges to this all-important court. So as judges' terms ended, no one could replace them. And by December 2019, the number of judges fell below the minimum needed to even hear a case. The court was effectively shut down, and it's been paralyzed ever since.
The impact was immediate.
As many news sources reported at the time, it basically crippled the WTO. Without its highest court, the system lost the one thing it couldn't function without, a final umpire for trade wars.
And this has created a massive, almost absurd loophole. Think about it. Now if a country loses a trade case, it can just appeal the decision into a legal black hole. Since the appeals court can't function, the appeal just sits there forever, meaning the original ruling never becomes binding. It's a get-out-of-jail-free card, a way to veto any outcome you don't like.
So, what happens in a world without a final trade referee? Countries go back to playing by their own rules. And they're turning more and more to that sneaky tool we talked about, the one that's much harder to see than a tariff, the subsidy.
We're in a new era of trade, and the game has totally changed. Tariffs are obvious, right? They're public. Everyone can see them. But subsidies, they're quiet, they're subtle. And the world's biggest economies are using them like never before to give their own industries an edge, creating a playing field that is anything but level. And who's playing this new game? Well, a World Bank analysis from 2018 shows it's really a contest between a few heavyweights. As you can see here, the European Union, the United States, and China account for, get this, nearly 3/4 of all documented subsidy programs.
But this next part is the real shocker. When World Bank economists actually measured the impact of these subsidies, they found something stunning. This chart shows that subsidies often distort trade way more than tariffs do. In manufacturing, they have the same effect as an 8% tariff. But look at agriculture. Their effect is equivalent to a massive 15% tariff. That is way higher than most actual tariffs. Subsidies are a hidden barrier with a huge punch.
And this subsidy game has real-world victims. And they are, overwhelmingly, the developing nations. Why? Because so many of their economies depend on agriculture. The very sector with these subsidies from rich countries hit the absolute hardest. They can't possibly afford to get into a subsidy war, so their farmers get priced right out of the global market. It just makes it that much harder for them to grow and lift their people out of poverty.
So this is the new reality we're in. The global referee is on the sidelines, maybe for good. And a new game of powerful, hard-to-see subsidies is being played by the world's biggest economies. It leaves us with a pretty fundamental question. Without a referee, is global trade still a fair game? And if it's not, who gets to write the new rules?